Hello, folks. Welcome to the podcast. This is July 5th in the year of our Lord 2026. I'm TJ Haines, founder of The Forge. We're going to talk about the SSPX. I have some additional thoughts on that, why they are not the saviors of the church, and really why I wish they would get with the program. Specifically, something I'm going to point out is something reported on EWTN News today. SSPX rejects Vatican's excommunication, calls it objectively unjust and invalid. I'm going to show you why this proves that they are con artists. I'm going to tell you why I believe this proves that. But I'm also going to give you some examples of how the Vatican has made overtures to the SSPX over decades, and the SSPX keeps slapping their hand away. First, why did I say welcome to the podcast? What happened to Firebranded? Well, that's part of the news that I'm going to get to at the end of this podcast. This is going on the Firebranded podcast feed. It is also going on the Forge podcast feed. So is it an episode of Firebranded? Is it an episode of the Forge? Yes. More on that at the end of this podcast. I'm going to read this to you. Reported by EWTN News, SSPX rejects Vatican excommunication, calls it objectively unjust and invalid. In a letter addressed to Pope Leo, the Superior General of the SSPX justified the episcopal consecrations that prompted the Vatican's decree. If you don't know, you're living under a rock. The Society of St. Pius X recently consecrated new bishops without Vatican approval and against the Vatican's warning that such an act would be schismatic and they would be excommunicated. They went ahead and did it anyway on July 1st. The Society of St. Pius X, whose members are known as Lefebvrians, I never knew that. I always called them Lefebvites. They rejected the recent excommunications decree by the Vatican after consecrating 4 bishops without papal authorization. Now, here's the part you have to pay attention to, folks. In a letter addressed to Pope Leo, released on July 3rd, Father David, I'm not even going to try that last name again, or I could be pronouncing his first name wrong too, Father David, Superior General of the SSPX, justified the episcopal consecrations that prompted the Vatican's decree, declaring the group to be in the decree that declared the group to be in schism as, quote, an extreme measure to save souls amid the doctrinal and moral confusion in which the church finds itself, end quote. I'm going to leave a link to this and on this episode's on-demand page or description, wherever you're finding it. I'm also going to leave links to other articles that I wrote at The Forge related to the Society of St. Pius X and this whole drama that has been going on, okay? Here's my position on this, and I'm going to keep it very simple. There's some nuances here in the article, and you can read them yourselves, but the gist of it is this. The SSPX talks a good game. They say a lot of things that sound beautiful, but what you're going to get from the tone of the SSPX is we are the victims. We are being handed scorpions and snakes by the church when we asked only for bread. The church is attacking us, and we don't understand why. We're just trying to save souls. It's a victim mentality intrinsic to radical traditionalism. This is my opinion based on a lot of experience with radical traditionalism. We get a lot of that jargon here because, of course, when you're the perpetrator, when you're doing wrong, you absolutely have to have a moral posture that makes you seem like the virtuous one. And that's what they do here. One way of looking like the virtuous one is you look like the victim. That has very high currency value in the church. To be hurt, to look like the victim, very valuable currency in the church world. And the SSPX and many, many, many radical traditionalists at large know exactly how to bank with that currency. So you're going to get that tone from this article. But here's really what you need to pay attention to. SSPX rejects Vatican's excommunication. Wait a second. The SSPX issued one, but I think 2 statements of fidelity to the Holy Father and the Church before these excommunications. In other words, they issued statements saying, we are faithful Catholics, we are faithful to Rome, we are loyal to the Pope. We just want to make that clear, okay? We're not anti-Catholics or anything. We're Catholic, we're loyal, faithful, etc. But dot, 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 dot. What follows the three dots doesn't matter. We're loyal to the Pope. And I'm paraphrasing, but this is what their statement of fidelity essentially is. We're faithful, we're loyal, we respect the Pope, we acknowledge that Leo is the true Pope, and so on. Fast forward, what do we have? SSPX rejects Vatican excommunication. Well, if you reject Vatican excommunication, first of all, if I received a letter from the Vatican telling me I was excommunicated, you can bet your behind I would not be rejecting the decree. I would take that very, very seriously. I would be getting the Vatican on the phone immediately saying, what is this? What does it mean? How can I make it right? I wouldn't be shrugging my shoulders and rolling my eyes and then tossing it away and going on with my business, because I really am faithful to the church. SSPX rejects Vatican excommunication. Well, that means when you wrote that statement of fidelity to the Pope, to the church, whatever, you didn't really mean it. You didn't really mean it. Your position then is either the same as your position now, defiance, lack of fidelity, or your position has changed. Either way, that means you're not very good at being Catholic. In a second also, I'm going to say a few things that are positive about the SSPX that I think we do need to pay attention to in just a minute. The reason I call this out is because at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what you profess if you're not living what you profess. I've said this before in past podcasts. Every week at Sunday Mass, we profess the Nicene Creed. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. In Jesus Christ, yada, yada, yada. Every week we say that, but do we take it seriously? Do we live what we profess in that creed? Because I've got news for you. The devil believes everything that's in the Nicene Creed. The devil can recite the Nicene Creed and mean every word more than you can. And yet the devil is in hell. Why? Because he did not live what he believes. He believes in God. He believes in Jesus Christ. He believes in the Holy Spirit, all of that stuff. But he did not live, act in accord with what he believed, what he knew about God and the Trinity and everything else we profess in the creed. What you profess doesn't matter if you do not live what you profess. What you live, my friends, that is really what you believe. What you live is what you really believe. You understand? So with that in mind, I'm going to take you through a couple of things, because the SSPX is trying to position itself as victims here. The SSPX is not a victim. Here's a list of Rome's outreach. I did an extensive article on this, which I will also put in this episode's on-demand page or description on podcast feeds. I did an extensive article on this. This is just a rundown, okay? A list of Rome's outreach overtures that the SSPX rejected or failed to sufficiently respond to. 1988. It goes back as far as 1988. The Ecclesia Dei Commission of John Paul II. 2 days after the illicit consecrations by the SSPX, so in 1988, they did what they just did on July 1st and were also excommunicated for it then. 2 days after those consecrations, John Paul II established the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei on July 2nd in 1988. The stated purpose of this commission was to help those attached to the SSPX return to full communion with the church while keeping their traditional liturgy. So the church offered for these now excommunicated Lefevites to return to full communion with the church and to keep celebrating the traditional liturgy. So the very act that broke communion with the church was followed immediately by the church making overtures to them with a standing structure to repair that rift, okay? So that's the first time this happened. Let's go beyond 1988. The Ecclesia Dei communities as a living alternative to the SSPX. The commission gave rise to groups like the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter, the FSSP. You're probably familiar with them. They celebrate the traditional Latin Mass licitly. They're allowed to. Okay, it's a very traditional order. I was almost going to apply to be in that order once upon a time, actually. So the commission gave rise to groups like that. founded by former SSPX members who wanted the traditional Mass and communion with Rome. So the church extended its hand, said, come back to full communion with the church and keep celebrating the traditional liturgy. Some of those SSPXers responded, but the SSPX as a group, as an organization, declined. Because some of those SSPXers responded, you have the rise of groups like the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter. Around the year 2000, talks continued, obviously Rome opening that door. And then in 2007, Benedict XVI lifts the excommunications imposed in 1988, okay? So the SSPX effectively did nothing. The church is doing all the work here. The church is making all the overtures. The church is making all the effort, including up to 2007 when the excommunications were lifted. 2009. And before that was another overture that some people may not realize. Benedict XVI's Motu Proprio Summorum Pontificum, which made the celebration of the traditional Latin Mass easier, made the Latin Mass more available, gave priests permission to celebrate it if they wanted to. They didn't need to ask for special permission. As long as they knew how to celebrate it, they were allowed to celebrate it. Summorum Pontificum in 2007 is why the traditional Latin Mass became more and more widely available, okay? That was really an overture to the SSPX. Then in 2009, Benedict lifted the excommunications. 2009 to 2011, Rome sits down for a doctrine talk. Benedict opened formal doctrinal talks aimed at the real disagreements between the Church and the SSPX. Then in 2015, we have another overture by Pope Francis. Probably that'll surprise a lot of people to hear. Francis made the SSPX confessions valid and licit, so the SSPX priests were allowed to hear confessions. He then extended it indefinitely, and later he allowed bishops to grant faculties for SSPX weddings. Now their weddings were licit and valid, and he kept opening doors even beyond that, folks, let's be honest. So there's a history of the church trying to bring the SSPX back, and that history involves the SSPX saying, no, thank you. Some did come across that bridge, right? Individual SSPX priests and members. But as an organization, the SSPX said, no, thank you. So the SSPX, the Society of St. Pius X, is not a victim here. I wouldn't say they're the aggressor, but I would say they're the perpetrator here, okay? Now, let me say something that I do like about the SSPX. It's a very old school ethos. It's an old school spirit, and it's not just the superficial stuff. It's not just the Mass. It's not just the vestments. It's their attitude. Assuming they have a sincere attitude, and frankly, some of them do not. But I think as an organization, its attitude, by that, I mean, they have a bad attitude, but what I'm talking about is their attitude toward Catholicism. Maybe not their attitude as Catholics, because if they had good Catholic attitude, they wouldn't have done what they did. But their attitude toward Catholicism, I like very much. And I wish we could find a way to get back to that throughout the global church. Okay, this idea of serving the people and serving the gospel. I think sometimes the SSPX priests say that and it's really just lip service, but I think sometimes we get that from the SSPX and it's sincere. Okay, it's very old school posturing, and I think for some of them, it's sincere. They mean it. It's not good Catholic attitude, but it is a good attitude toward Catholicism and toward the ministry of priesthood. The modern church has gotten too tangled up with the business of the world. I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's an appropriate thing that has become bad, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Priests too often are administrators. Priests ought to just be in the fields doing the work. Of course, it has always involved some level of administration, but I feel like now it's just too much. Okay? I think the priesthood in general needs to get back to its roots. I don't think priests need to be John the Baptist, a voice in the wilderness, a voice crying out in the wilderness and whatnot. But I really think the priesthood, the modern Catholic priesthood, really needs to get back to its roots. I have no idea how that can happen because there are far fewer priests. So fewer priests have to do more work, pick up some slack, do things that you wouldn't think a priest gets ordained to do. Priests shouldn't have to worry about the boiler at the parish. Priests shouldn't be involved in fundraiser meetings and so on and so on and so on. Priests have become CEOs, not because they want to. They don't do it to be CEOs. They do it to serve the people of God, to serve the church. It takes a certain character trait to do that and to really want to do that. Let's recognize that. We need to get back to an old school posture, an old school attitude in the modern priesthood. I don't know how that happens. I think it has to start at the top. It has to be an attitude adjustment at the top. I don't know how you make that happen, and I'm not trying to sound like a defeatist. I just know that there is an attitude that comes through with the SSPX priests, not their Catholic attitude, which is faulty, but their attitude toward Catholicism and toward priestly ministry that I like very much. I will say that. I do like that very much. And I wish sincerely that we could get back to that in the modern church or in the present day church, in the priesthood in the church. And all the more reason why the SSPX should knock off their nonsense and submit to Rome and bring something good and unique into the village that the village can benefit and learn from. The village is the rest of the church, the rest of the ecclesial church. And I say that to traditionalists too. Traditionalists, if you're going to a TLM because you feel more at home or whatever, look, some of your reasons are just bad and some of them are understandable. But understand this, if you're taking cover at a TLM parish, you're not at an ordinary form parish, which means you're not available to edify your neighbors. You want to change the church? How are you going to be doing that if you're hiding at a TLM, where nobody needs to learn from your example? Nobody at a TLM parish needs to learn from your example. Maybe the people at an ordinary form, at an ordinary parish, maybe they need to learn from your example. But they're not learning it because you're not giving it. You're not giving it because you're hiding at a TLM. And the SSPX is hiding in schism, hiding, quote unquote, hiding. There's a lot that they could probably bring to the church if they would just drop the nonsense and get with the program. That's what I have to say about that. Now, a little bit of news about The Forge and Firebranded. I have relaunched The Forge. You'll find it at theforge.fm. It used to be on Substack. I am still present on Substack. I'm still very active on Substack. I have a column there on Substack. I'm very active on Substack Notes. But The Forge has been moved to a different platform. It's bigger, it's bolder, it's easier to read. The posts are more engaging and more interesting. If you don't know my work over at The Forge, you really need to check it out. And I'm not kidding. It is unique in Catholic media. It is highly unique in Catholic media. Just start reading one or two articles. You're going to get that impression right away. Theforge.fm. I have been really working so hard on this relaunch. Not just the planning phase and the strategizing and preparatory and execution, which has been going on really for months. Why am I telling you this? First, to explain why I've been kind of out of the mix for a while, but also I really want you to join me, okay? Theforge.fm is not a hobby, it's a mission. The mission is this. For a long time, I have recognized that Catholics are being misconfigured by Catholic media. Some of it is established Catholic media, but mostly no. A lot of it is independent Catholic media. Not all of it, but a lot of it. A lot of independent Catholic media is disfiguring and disorienting Catholics, even practicing well-intentioned, well-meaning Catholics, and they don't even realize it's happening to them. Theforge.fm is my response to all of that, trying to offer commentary on news and culture, spirituality, theology, stuff like that, that forms, it's basically Catholic faith formation that you don't even realize is happening because it happens in the form of commentary on news, commentary on culture, and things like that. It's teaching you, it's coaching you, it's conditioning you to think clean, to think strong, to think laser focused. Because until our minds are set right in that way, nothing else will happen. Do you want to be a saint? Well, if your mind is scrambled, as independent Catholic media is causing it to be, you are not going to become a saint. Folks, I have interactions all the time with active practicing Catholics, right, who are at church all the time, rosary, 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 and they are definitely not going to be saints on their current course and trajectory. Why, if they're doing all these spiritually laudable things? Because their minds are scrambled. They're nasty. They're angry. They're defiant. They are not humble. They do not have the attitudes of saints. They don't have saint. I don't mean that I'm not saying they're not saints, because none of us is a saint. We're working to get there. But you need good soil in order to get there, right? You need good soil for God to plant that seed, the seed of holiness that grows and grows and grows. But when your mind is scrambled, that's the seed of every virtue. Every virtue starts in the mind, not in the will. It starts with the mind knowing the truth so that the will can do the truth. You understand? So this is why I say the seed of every virtue is the intellect, not really the will. The will does it, but first the intellect must know it. And with the way independent Catholic media and some, not all, some Catholic influencers are conditioning the Catholic faithful, we're not developing a people oriented towards sainthood. We are conditioning rebels. We are conditioning people of fear, anger, and rage. So, the Forge.fm is my answer to that. It is not a hobby. It is not something that is going to make me rich. It's not something that even puts money in my pocket right now. I hope so, but not really. It doesn't even cover the bills. Okay, the Forge is a mission, and I really want you to be a part of it. Go to theforge.fm and become a member. Become a free member, or for $5 a month, become a paid member. $5 a month gets you more content, obviously. It also, the most important thing is it supports the apostolate. Becoming a free member gets you a once or twice a week newsletter. Usually it's one major article every week and one digest of other things that I publish at the website. Dead simple. Just throw your email in there, you're done. Dead simple to do, and it's free. Okay? And maybe one day you will become a $5 a month supporter of the mission. Another way you can help, and this is a big one, another way you can help me or help the Forge is go and read some articles. You don't have to register to read. Go and check out theforge.fm once in a while. Make that part of your usual cycle. We know that you're going to Catholic news sites already anyway, right? Go and check out an article or two here or there. You're going to see immediately why it's different from everybody else. If you read something that you really like, share it. Mention it on socials. Send it to your friends. If you are a subscriber and you get one of the articles in your email and you're like, hey, that was pretty good, forward that email to a friend. Because really, the mission of the Forge, the biggest enemy to the mission of the Forge, there's two of them. The algorithm, because the internet lives on social media now, right? The algorithm is a huge obstacle to the mission of the Forge. And another obstacle to the mission of the Forge is the machine that is independent Catholic media. I don't have their money. I don't have their resources. And I'm okay with being small. I really, really, truly am. But this is how God made me. He made me a Catholic communicator. He made me an evangelizer. I can't not do it. I know because I've tried. I've been doing this for 30 years. Anyhow, independent Catholic media, even established Catholic media, even if it's good, okay, that's something I can't compete with. And it's not something I'm trying to compete with. And I'm not trying to put other people out of business or anything like that, although some of them really need to be put out of business. But it's an obstacle because I can't elevate my voice above and beyond all of that noise. But you can help the Forge to do that. You can help the Forge to be the authoritative voice that it really intrinsically is. But if it's a voice shouting against a wall of noise, nobody's going to hear it. So if you can't afford to support the work with a $5 a month subscription, that's cool. But maybe subscribe for free, okay? This way, the subscription for free takes the algorithm out of the mix. Every time I publish something, you get it. You don't have to rely on an algorithm to maybe send it to you, to your feed, or maybe not. So that's a good way to help. Not just to help the brand, but to help yourself, right? You get great content without relying on an algorithm. But another very important and very effective way that you can support the work of the Forge, share the articles that you like. Don't just sit on them and say, oh, that was pretty good. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad you liked it. But I really need you to help me spread the word. I don't have the money to advertise. I don't sell controversy. You know, controversy advertises a brand very easily and for free. But I don't sell controversy. I serve the truth, not agendas. I don't clickbait you. I don't rage bait you. I don't play games with your mind. I'm here to serve the truth and to serve you, not an agenda and not somebody's talking points. So you can help spread the word and amplify the voice of the Forge.fm by sharing articles that you like. Don't just read them and move on. Share them. Share them to your socials. Share them with somebody at your parish, something. That would really help me a lot. Here's the thing at the Forge, okay? This is the cadence that I'm going to, how frequently I'm going to be publishing stuff. I'm just one person here. So how frequently and what sort of stuff do I post? All right, do I publish? This is what I'm dedicated to. One major article a week, one minor article a week, one short form podcast. So it's either going to be news briefs, that's for paid members only, news briefs. I also sometimes do a monologue called Moment of Truth. Okay, so a short form podcast and maybe one long form podcast, maybe once a week, maybe once every other week. But there's at least going to be two things to read and one thing to listen to each and every single week. It's very likely there's going to be more to read and a little bit more to listen to because I know how I am, and I probably cannot keep myself disciplined down to just two things a week, but let's see. So it's going to be a pretty good cranking out of content over at The Forge, and it's not going to be nonsense. It's all going to be top shelf. Go and look at what I have over there now, theforge.fm, top shelf stuff. Okay, news, culture, theology, and fire, boldness, and honest to God, the truth. Theforge.fm. So depending on where you're catching this, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an episode of The Forge, or it has been an episode of Firebranded. Actually, it's been both wrapped up into one. Nobody else in Catholic media can do this. Wrap up two podcasts in one slot. Lord have mercy. I am unbelievable. Visit the website at theforge.fm and consider signing up. Consider becoming a free or paid subscriber and share what you like. It would really help me a lot. If you're catching this, by the way, on YouTube at the Firebranded feed, Firebranded is not going away. I just had to take a break from it for a couple of reasons. First, I just didn't have time because of the relaunch. And second, because I'm not doing too well on YouTube, so I'm not going to be on there every week. I'm not going to be devoting myself to all that. But I'm not going away. I still plan on doing once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, something with the Firebranded feed. So if you're catching this on Firebranded, my YouTube channel, by the way, is Catholic Firebrand. If you're catching me there, I am still around. I'm still going to be turning out podcasts here and there. So don't worry, I haven't gone anywhere. We're still chugging forward. I'm TJ Haines, founder of The Forge. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen, and God be with you all. Bye-bye.